The countdown is on, but you are not alone. This is Countdown to College, your weekly guide from Education Quest Foundation, here to help you plan, apply, and pay for college one step at a time. I'm your host, Gage, and today I am happy to be joined by Marjorie Moss, CEO of ShareGood. Hi, Marjorie. Thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Absolutely, Gage. It's so nice to be here. I'm honored that I was asked to give some perspective.
Now, I'm sure that a lot of our audience listening at home is familiar with volunteer work, but the benefits and learning you can gain from those experiences might be, way bigger than they're actually thinking. So,
Mhm.
Marjorie, why don't you just start us off by explaining why you think volunteering is such a valuable experience for students beyond, just doing good?
You're exactly right about that question. It's more than just doing good. Volunteering can add to your understanding of the community, understanding of an issue, understanding of your own skills and how they can best be applied to a mission, a purpose, a cause. And all of those things, even if you decide not to go into nonprofit work, discovering what your purpose is something that should begin young and not be something you just look at in retirement or look at as you reach success professionally, because it your purpose is woven into all of those things. It's woven into how you work with your family. It's woven into what you choose professionally. It's woven into your free time and how you spend it. And so the benefit of volunteering is that it gives you an opportunity to try that out, try out like how your skills and your abilities can be matched with something that you care about. And that's invaluable. It's more than just doing good.
Yeah, it's so funny because I know for a lot of high school students, volunteer work is kind of dreaded sometimes because they're like, oh, I have to get this for like an essay I'm applying for or a scholarship, I mean. But when I think back on my high school experience, like a lot of those volunteer experiences, and I'm sure we'll get more into it, ended up being like really rewarding, I feel like, because you do get to build that connection with your community.
Not to talk, I'm not going to talk on this podcast much about me and my experience, but what I found, and this was a long time ago, was that volunteering within my high school for blood drives and food collection and things of that nature, it it rallied me around my fellow students, but also made me see that I could accomplish something. I could plan a big event. I could I could get people to participate in something worthwhile. And for me, in the work that I do now, I see that that seed was planted way back in high school,
Mm,
as far as getting people to get involved in their community and get involved with something that matters. So I think it's planting the seed, and it's way more than just getting your hours done for,
yeah,
well, hopefully more than getting your hours done for a scholarship requirement.
yeah, yeah. Now, let's say these students are looking to volunteer for the first time. Maybe they've never done it before. Where can students find these meaningful volunteer opportunities that also maybe align with their interests or their career goals?
Well, a fair amount of your listeners may be from the Omaha metro area or from Southwest Iowa. And I will tell you that those individuals are very lucky, because there's two websites that you should go to. You should go to shareomaha.org, or you should go to shareiowa.org. And those two websites have four easy calls to action: find and fund nonprofits, volunteer, events, so calendar, and shop for good. And you want to zero in on that volunteer pillar. And when you do, I call it the best shopping experience you can have, because what you do is you say, I care about impacting kids, or I care about arts and culture, or there's a specific cause. I care about autism awareness, or I care about domestic violence prevention. All of those things are listed as ways to engage. You click on them, narrow your search, and you can see in one glance which opportunities need what kind of service. And you can narrow that search down by appropriate for students ages 13 through 17. You can also just see what kind of skills they're looking for. So as you get older and go into college age, you may be wanting something that's more aligned with your major or aligned with your career goals. And if you even know that as a senior and junior and sophomore in high school, you can start figuring out, how could I help out with marketing? How could I help out with graphic design? How could I help out with wood shop work and building and like Habitat for Humanity work? How could I get some better experience doing something that gets those hours for me, but also is a clear path to where I want to be professionally? So enjoy that shopping experience. It's pretty intuitive. We make it as easy as possible. But let's say you don't live in the Omaha metro. Um, Places that are usual suspects for volunteer opportunity postings are United Ways. Sometimes, and sometimes the Chamber of Commerce has a listing of nonprofits in their community, and you can just go down that rabbit hole and see, like, oh, I really do care about the American Red Cross, or I really do care about disaster relief. And you can find those nonprofits that are doing so. And most of those nonprofits, if they do recruit volunteers, has have a volunteer page or opportunity section on their website. And I invite you to click through. Or you could go old school and Google the nonprofit that you think you want to serve in your community, find the phone number, and actually call the place and find out how a student could get involved. So there's the gamut of ways to get involved and find those volunteer opportunities. But United Ways and share websites are typically the best ways.
Yeah, I was really lucky in high school. I'm a big theater guy, actually. And so I found one of our local community playhouses needed some volunteers for their landscaping. And so I got to go do some landscaping. And then they're like, well, are you guys interested like in watching like our rehearsals at all? And so that was like a really cool experience that I got because I also got to help out. So I don't know. I do
Mhm.
like um it is worth it to obviously, help your community out where you can, but really finding those opportunities that align with what you're interested in too can really get you some good experience.
And there's good general volunteering experience. Pretty much, I mean, most nonprofits have an easy entry of a position that doesn't need a lot of training, that doesn't need a lot of, you know, deep skill. But if they do need something that it really aligns with what you've been studying or what you're very interested in, never hesitate to ask when you're at that nonprofit, because you don't know what it's going to lead to.
Yeah. Now, for students who maybe have some limited time, or maybe they, are limited on transportation, what advice do you have for those students who want to volunteer but aren't really sure how to get started?
Well, back to the share websites, there's virtual volunteering. There's that you can do it at your own home. And there's ways for you to get connected to those virtual volunteer opportunities pretty easily. The nonprofits are used to fielding inquiries from people who want to do things virtually. So just know that's an option. But regarding like limited time or wanting to fit it into a schedule or limited transportation, back to that search that I was talking about with United Ways or Chambers of Commerce or a nonprofit that you really just admire in the community, to get a phone call or an email or a text from a student that wants to help but has those limitations. I can't imagine a volunteer coordinator or a director of marketing or anybody saying, well, we don't have anything for you. Like, people want to engage with people that want to help. So don't see it as a barrier, see it as a way to get creative with that nonprofit with what you'd be able to do.
Yeah, that's great. Now, in terms of some of the other benefits that can come from volunteering, in what ways can volunteering open up doors for, networking and future career opportunities?
Well, often people say that it's a great resume builder. Well, yes, it is. But you're also meeting professionals in maybe a field that you're interested in. And what was great was I got a chance to ask the different share communities in our network about great volunteer success stories. One of them was from Omaha, a woman named Leah. She was working young adult was young adult, young professional, was looking for ways to use her graphic design and creative skills. And she was working in a medical field at the time, just part time, I think, and wanted to figure out how to use those skills. And it turned out that the creative and internal communications work that she was able to work on with that nonprofit, this is something that maybe as you're in college and you're trying to figure out ways to really substantially build your resume, that executive director of that nonprofit, the nonprofit was called Spielbound. He was her prime reference for her now career. So
Mm.
the work that she did, the value that she added, the team member that she became, even as a volunteer, that allowed her to leverage that, parlay that into a new career field. I love that story. And that's at the highest level. But back to just a little bit about my own story. I was an art history major, wanted to go into arts administration. And so I had time in the summer and some requirements over the summer of things I had to do. And so I just literally cold called the Jocelyn Art Museum and said, "Do you need anything?" Uh, like like I don't need to be paid at this time. I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to be in that position. And I got to work at the membership department. I learned all about annual funds. I learned all about database and list pulling and stuff that nonprofits just really need. And I never would have had an experience to do that if I hadn't just raised my hand. And
Yeah.
that supervisor I had turned out to be a reference for one of my first jobs. So just know that raising your hand and saying, I just want to help. And even if they know it's to build your resume, you're still coming to the plate with enthusiasm and interest and capability and questions and curiosity. Those things are valued and recognized by supervisors that are going to be helping you in your volunteer work.
I love that you brought up those stories because we just had a career services professional on the podcast and they talked about, the power of networking and how it's not like you can't think of it as such a corporate thing where it only happens in the professional corporate world. Like it really does start when you're in high school and you're making those connections and even the smallest connections can lead to references for jobs. So yeah, I love that.
Absolutely. And some of the people you meet just working alongside them, they end up becoming friends. They end up
Yeah.
becoming future colleagues you're going to run into in your career if you're in the same community that you served in. And that can't be underscored enough.
Mm.
So, and I would say there's just that advice that you never burn a bridge. You're always
Hmm.
grateful. Bring in donuts on your last day. Like do the things that will leave a good memory of you and taste in their mouth. So when your name comes up or you ask them for something, they are more than willing to help you.
Hmm. Yeah, and I know
Excited to help you even.
this isn't directly related, but Jenna Fisher, who played Pam on The Office, such a random tangent, but she wrote a book about her acting experience and how even treating like the receptionist well at her like auditions and even for jobs,
Mhm.
like eventually that receptionist could be the casting director in the room. Like you just never know who you're
Mhm.
talking to and you want to treat people how you want to be treated.
Yes, you want to treat the entry level anything as you would the senior vice president,
Hmm.
paying the same amount of respect, the same amount of congeniality, and that gets noticed that you're not just discounting somebody because maybe they aren't somebody that you need to impress, quote unquote.
Hmm. Now, what type of leadership roles or real world skills can students gain through volunteering and through the volunteering experiences?
I found, and I and work and I have children that are, I have kids of my own that are in the high school age, and I have found that raising your hand within your school for volunteer opportunities and leadership opportunities gives you similar resume and skill building experiences. For instance, raise your hand to plan the blood drive. Raise your hand to plan the food drive that's happening for your school. Those types of giving back that your school's going to want to do inherently. Most schools have things like that. They have a closet, they have a pantry, they have get involved, and the longer you're involved with that type of activity, you're going to be in a planning role at some time. And just the experience of having to organize a project and move it from idea to completion is something that is hard to gain in a classroom. And so it's easier, I think, to have a leadership role if you're within your school. But I would also say that there's there's youth service councils, there's youth leadership groups that are attached to different nonprofits. I've mentioned the Red Cross and blood drives a lot, but I know they used to have one. And then I think the Kim Foundation has a mental health advocacy program for that allows you to get some leadership experience with something that you already care about, and puts you alongside other students that are similarly passionate and want to learn those leadership experiences. So I think and you said real world skills. So honestly, like it's obvious that I'm on the marketing, fundraising, administrative side of nonprofits, but there's also great program development. There's also like physical labor that has to happen at
Mm.
times. There's also project management that has to happen. And if you can get involved with people that are more maybe direct service and you're able to help at that level, goodness, I makes me think of a gentleman that was from Detroit named Quentin, and he's a college student at Wayne State University, so he needed to get some internship, some volunteer experience to add to what he was doing. And he worked at an organization called the Crossroads. And what I loved hearing about that was that the Crossroads purpose in volunteer recruitment is that they want to expose and grow the caring power, quote unquote, of their volunteers. And so they aligned Quentin's skills with one-on-one discussions with clients about their needs and what they needed from a basic needs human service perspective. But also he worked in the volunteer kitchen alongside people, so he got like practical program direct service experience, but he also had this great experience of working directly with clients and growing empathy and understanding and communication skills. So the older you get in your volunteer experience, you're going to have more and more opportunities to gain skills that are going to reflect well on your resume.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, even just personally, I was quite the socially anxious kid in high school, and volunteering really pulled me out of my shell a lot, just because you get to talk to so many people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like you said, it brings out that caring factor, that empathy.
Mm-hmm. Because typically with a nonprofit and a cause, you're serving a need in the community, and it may not be a need that you personally have, but it's a need that others have
Hmm.
identified, and you get to enter into that experience.
Marjorie, how should students present these volunteer experiences on, their resume or their college applications or LinkedIn profiles?
Well, I think in resumes, there's kind of two sections regarding experience. There's professional experience and maybe extracurricular community experience. If your role at the nonprofit was more just general volunteerism, volunteer service hours, doing whatever they asked, and not super directed toward a skill, or a role that was made for you, list it in the extracurricular and community section. And I encourage you to make that section robust, to show that you're interested in different causes, you are raising your hand to get experience and connections in the community. But let's say that you are a college student and you volunteered for a summer I volunteered for a summer at Nebraska Shakespeare, and I was able to put that experience, even though it was for a community experience, I definitely had a role that was mine. And so I was able to talk about that on my resume like it was a job or an internship in a way that was different than just my general service opportunities. And so you can make a differentiation on your resume, the actual document, but in LinkedIn or a college application, don't undersell yourself. Like if you actually like accomplish something, had what in the like the advertising world they call a deliverable, something you accomplished, something that was an end result of your actions. Oh my gosh, you got to sing that. You got to sing that in your college application, and then in your LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn is great because some people just list things like listicle things like the bullet points, but tell a story about why you really enjoyed working at the domestic violence shelter or why you enjoyed working at the local theater like you did and what you gained from that experience. So don't make it just like I did 25 hours of service. Like
Yeah,
what transpired for you? What did you learn in that 25 hours? And so make the most of that. Like really take some time after or during your volunteer experience and write down, type out, send yourself a text regarding what it was that held your attention for that amount of hours that you served with them and what maybe you maybe even want to come back and do later.
that's really smart actually to write it down or jot it down right after you finish it up. Because I know I'm
Mhm.
someone who, as soon as it's done, it's gone. Don't remember what happened. So good advice.
Well, I'm glad that happened. I mean, you're younger than me, so I'm glad that happens to you and not just me. So that's good.
Now, you've already touched on a couple of stories that, involved like someone getting actually a reference from their volunteer opportunities. So,
Mhm.
what's the best way to ask, a volunteer supervisor or an organization leader for a reference?
Well, first off, make sure they know who you are when you're volunteering. The warmer the conversation is to start, the easier it is to ask for a reference because it feels pretty natural, honestly. So don't just show up and not meet the people that are involved at the higher level. Not maybe not the CEO, depending on the size of the organization. Like sometimes the executive director or such is hard to reach, but at least the manager over the work that you're doing, make sure they know who you are. Introduce yourself to them, say why you chose to help out at the museum, at the animal shelter, and they will probably invite you back to help and do more for that nonprofit because you introduced yourself. After introducing yourself, after performing the service, it should be a pretty natural way for you to email, reach out via phone, reach out via text, whatever manner you've been communicating with that supervisor and ask for the reference. And if you had the opportunity to really meet the executive director and had a meaningful interchange, not just like a shake hand or a, hey, my name's Jim, like, like if you actually have a meaningful interaction, like you don't ask, you don't get. So if you feel like you had a genuine enough connection, ask for the reference and sometimes it's easier if you want them to fill out like a reference or something on LinkedIn, like to get them to
Mm,
write it for your profile. That's really easy. That's an easy thing. And then anybody that sees your profile, that's a prospective employer will see that. I think that's a really good thing, a way to maybe tie a bow on a substantial volunteer experience is to get that supervisor to say, "Oh my gosh, Gage was such a engaging was such a Gage was such a vibrant and excited volunteer and did anything we asked of him. And you just want them to be effusive regarding what they're saying.
hmm
If you don't think they're going to be effusive, if you think they're pretty like they like maybe just get a confirmation of the hours that you worked and um the knowledge that they would speak well of you if somebody called.
Do you have just any general advice for any high school students that are wanting to explore community service, probably for the first time even?
A lot of the volunteer opportunities on Share Omaha and Share Iowa are for groups. And there's opportunities, like I said, that call out 13 to 17. Um, feel free to do something along with a friend. It might make it less intimidating than showing up at the front door of the nonprofit by yourself. So do that. Also, like I said, don't discount volunteer opportunities for the community that come up within your school. That's a good way to really feel comfortable with your peers and your friends, to feel like you accomplished something together, and it builds your confidence to go out to a nonprofit that you haven't met before. Um, it is a this is just a life skill of putting yourself out there for opportunities. You shouldn't be afraid to say, I want to help, I want to do this is the job that I want. That's a skill that anybody should have at literally any stage of their career, and getting used to doing that at an early age, like saying, I'm really passionate about your animal shelter. My family adopted our last pet from your kennel, and I want to do whatever I can to help you. Approaching them via email, approaching them via phone, or however you want to do it. Like I think I've said a couple times, raising your hand is the first step in volunteering, and it builds your confidence in being able to ask for that reference, being able to see the connection between what you did for the volunteer sector and what you did for and what you want to do professionally, or what you want to do in college. Um, yeah, I think that's good.
All right, Marjorie, I have one final question for you. Now, does volunteering, just stop when you're done with high school, or how can college students and even graduates, continue to use volunteering to grow personally and professionally?
If you really catch the volunteer bug when you're in high school, know that most colleges have an Alpha Phi Omega, which is a volunteering for co-ed fraternity. There's also usually volunteer organizations at your college. I was lucky enough to be in a sorority that was a service sorority in my college, and to we had all the fun that most college clubs do, but at the core of it was a commitment to get service hours, impact the community, and rally around issues that were of importance to the campus. And that work, that that intense volunteering and event planning that I did in college, like it definitely set me on a path professionally. And I would say that for college students, your summers are invaluable. Even if you don't get a paid internship, do what I did. Contact that nonprofit that's as close to what you want to do as possible and say, I will do anything. Make sure they know that you are eager, happy to, and won't complain about anything they offer you to do. And then they start trusting you with more and more things. So, and as you get to college, you're going to be trusted with more responsibility, even at the volunteer level. So it's a huge opportunity to even more grow that resume, grow those references, grow your natural network that comes from them. And so just keep doing it. It's a great way to know that you've made a difference. I'm going to close with one more example from Charlotte. There's a gentleman named Grant, and he's a student at the University of Mississippi. And over the summer, he needed to get his like fraternity or school volunteer hours shored up. And so he ended up volunteering for an organization called Beds for Kids. And there was a quote in the story that I read about him about witnessing the joy of a child receiving a bed for the first time reminded me not only of how fortunate I am, but also how rewarding it feels to give back. It impacts beyond hours logged and has the potential to change, to transform lives, is what it said.
Mm,
And I believe that transformation of lives is not just the people that you're serving, it transforms the way that you approach others in the community. It changes the giver as well. So, back to that very first thing I talked about, purpose, you get a chance in college to really set out, what is it I want to uniquely do well in the world? What's a gift that I'm cultivating that I have? And how can I attribute it to something that matters? And you can do that as a CPA at a law at an accounting firm. You can do that as a marketer of products. But even in that very work that maybe feels very corporate, there's ways that you can use those same professional skills that you're growing as a college student to do something very meaningful for the community. And when you have an experience like Grant did in Charlotte, it starts changing your perspective regarding the use of your purpose and your skills. And I think that happens uniquely through volunteering in a way that doesn't happen other places.
I love that. Yeah. Okay, well, I think that wraps us up. Thank you, Marjorie, so much for joining us.
You are so welcome. It preparing for this interview kind of took me back a couple chapters in my life, but also I got a chance to really talk to the communities in my network and hear those great success stories, and it bolstered me to hear of the impact that our work at Share does, but also just the impact it has on the lives that are connected to our service, but also are the recipients of that service. So thank you. It was a great opportunity for me to Gage. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And to our audience, if you ever need help with anything college related, you can contact an Education Quest office near you for free help. You can find our contact information or schedule an appointment at educationquest.org. While you are there, you can sign up for the weekly Countdown to College email, also free. That's filled with a bunch of college tips and tricks. We'll send you deadlines, we'll send you reminders, all that good FAFSA info. And finally, just help us get this message out to as many students and families as possible by subscribing to this podcast on your favorite platform and hitting the like button on this episode. Thank you for watching and listening, and we will see you next week.